Welcome to this Farm Journal Farm Country Update. I'm Chip Flory. I am the host of Agri-Talk, and I'll be your moderator for today's conversation. Thanks for joining us. Russia's late February invasion of Ukraine came after months of speculation of when or if Russian President Vladimir Putin would order the strike. The actual start of an unprovoked territorial war, well, nothing new in the long-term history of the globe, but it is something that is entirely new to most observers. How the world reacts, the ability to construct a plan to turn back the aggressor, and the impact on everyday business outside of the region are questions that we are still trying to answer. As the invasion was happening, some called it the most significant disruption in global ag trade ever. It's a bold statement considering that the globe and global ag trade was still in recovery mode from the disruptions to the supply chain caused in part by the pandemic and the social and economic shutdowns. I'm not sure if the Russian invasion's influence on global trade has surpassed the disruptions caused by the pandemic, but I'm becoming more convinced that it will. The United Nations Food and Ag Organization has warned of a global food crisis, and that crisis has already hit some of the world's most vulnerable countries. Social unrest may be just beginning, and global grain suppliers seem to be making an effort to counter the tight supplies with food aid and by creating a pathway for Ukrainian grain to make it back into the global trade flows. And it's not just the flow of wheat, corn, sunflower seeds, and oils from and other crops from the Black Sea region that is in disruption. China started hoarding grains and oil seeds even before the invasion started. India is restricting wheat exports. Indonesia is actively using export controls to manage domestic palm oil supplies. Even Malaysia has banned some chicken exports. And those are just the headline items. Other disruptions are happening all over. And global sanctions on Russia have changed the flow of energies, particularly crude oil and natural gas into Europe, and the European Union looks ready to strengthen those sanctions. And now there is talk of humanitarian pathways for Ukrainian grain out of the Black Sea to the most needy countries. We will find out the reaction of Ukrainians to this plan here in just a bit. On today's panel is pro-farmer policy analyst Jim Wiesemeyer. We've also got former USDA chief economist Joe Glauber. Joe is a senior research fellow at the International Food Policy Research Institute in Washington, D.C., and serves as interim secretary of the Agricultural Market Information System, AMIS. And in just a little bit, we will hear from Yevhenii Tkachenko. Yevhenii works with Arable in Ukraine and has an extensive network of farmers and ag retailers across the country. Let's start with some opening thoughts from Jim and Joe, and then we'll bring Yevhenii into the conversation to get his perspective. And we will start with Pro Farmers Jim Wiesemeyer. Jim, welcome to the panel. It's good to have you here.
Sure, Chip. As you said, my forte is policy, so I'm going to try to stick to that, at least now. Russia's February 24th invasion of Ukraine, continued invasion, I should say, it's brought world disorder and a new world order because, in my judgment, now and ahead, changes are going to have to occur or need to occur. And that's amplified because of China's now very close relationship with Russia. Mm-hmm. And should China ever follow through on its long-term pledge to, quote, deal with Taiwan, the Russian war will be an exercise in getting ready for that major world event, which I personally think will eventually happen. Yeah. So this means a lot of policy changes ahead, but most particular for globalization. While I think the war is not an end to globalization, The US, Europe, and other countries have learned they can no longer count on the logistics and trading system they've utilized to help their countries' economies grow over the past few decades. And so that means needed reforms will bring short-term pain. We're seeing that now, and long-term gains, as in the case of the United States, because we're eventually going to get more flexibility and in more reliable trading partners, and the confidence we can get relative to the important imports this country needs. And that's especially true relative to semiconductors and a host of precious minerals relative to battery production. Of course, this also means expanding the production and sourcing of fertilizer needs ahead, and also reforming the shipping and overall logistics sector. There's a lot of policy moves there. The US will not be able to source all of our needs, whatever we do. And this means greater reliance, in my judgment, on countries like Mexico. I'm very bullish on Mexico in the decade ahead, Canada, Latin America, and other countries such as Vietnam, who have proven to be reliable suppliers and producers. Timeline, this could well be drawn out unless there, again, are some major surprises, such as Russian citizens or its governments taking on Putin or something similar. And if this situation lingers, the US, Europe, and most other countries will eventually adapt, but trade will not be as free flowing as before, and market volatility could linger far longer than most realize. That sets up a host of policy initiatives needed, Chip, including elements in a new farm bill, trade policy, and definitely a much needed energy policy reform that actually includes incentives for oil production. So I've got other policy thoughts, but that's the major policy things that I see short term and longer term, Chip.
Okay, real quick, Jim. And well, I shouldn't say real quick. It doesn't have to be that quick of an answer on this, because you're one of the best historians that I've ever known, and your ability to recognize history when it is being made and to put it in perspective is really pretty astonishing to watch sometimes. Where does this fit?
It's a gerund, it's an ing, it's ongoing. So I don't know how this is going to, quote, end, if that's even the right word to use. So this is up there, Chip, because of the bridging of China into the equation. And so I think it's really high up there. I really
Jim,
do.
people forget about that conversation that took place between Putin and Xi Jinping before the Winter Olympics started.
Absolutely. And they don't change. Either country does not change that quickly, if at all. And you're seeing the market. I mean, look what Putin did when the Russia invaded Crimea. That prompted the Western countries to begin putting sanctions on. But that Putin countered with increasing productivity. And we saw that relative to their wheat production. I mean, you talk about a mega change. Dr. Glauber will remember this. The old Soviet Union used to be the world's largest wheat importer. Now in many years, they're the world's largest wheat exporter. That's called a mega change. So we've already gone through a lot of things. But again, with China's close involvement with Russia on this makes it very paramount, near the top of world events in my 50-year career.
Yeah, I thought that's where it would be because of the weight of it all. Dr. Joe Glauber, let's go to you for some opening comments, please.
Great. No, thanks, Chip. And I'm going to stick kind of with the agricultural side of things and touch on fertilizer a little bit. But I think, I probably most in the audience who follow agriculture know this, but food prices were already on the rise before the war. We already were projecting low stocks for wheat, corn, soybeans. A lot of things happened last year, not the least of which was, rising demand coming out of, about mid-year last year. We started seeing increased imports or exports. And when you look at what happened in the Northern Plains and in Canada last year on wheat. We've had Morocco with a very poor wheat harvest. We've had a big drought in South America, which really gave a huge boost to soybean prices. And then you look in the vegetable oil market, we've had a lot going on, including a typhoon in Malaysia last year, labor problems in Malaysia that all contributed to these really high prices. This was all before February 24th. And since then, of course, prices have taken off 20, 30%. It's easy to focus on wheat, but Ukraine and Russia account for about 30% of the world wheat that's traded. Ukraine accounts for about 15% or so of the corn that's traded in the world. They're a big barley exporter. They're a big sunflower oil exporter. 50% of the market is out of Ukraine. So these all had immediate impacts on markets. And I keep telling people who look at, say, well, who's really affected by this? Everyone is. These prices are worldwide. And yes, if you're in North Africa and there you have wheat, per capita wheat consumption twice that of what in the US, twice that of in Europe, they are having to source wheat from other places. But Jim, as you pointed out, 22 years ago, Black Sea was a net food importer, a net wheat importer on wheat, and that's been a remarkable transformation. I think, frankly, the world is actually coping with this surprisingly well, given the disruptions. That is, people tend to look at these bilateral trade relationships and think of one government selling to another government, where in fact it's largely government. You may have a food or Ministry of Supply in Egypt that is putting out tenders, but who's coming in there are private companies saying we can supply at this price or whatever. And so it looks like things are working well. It's just at a huge price. So I keep telling people we're not going to run out of wheat. It's just going to cost a lot. And if you're a poor country, a Yemen, for example, that increase in wheat prices or in agricultural imports is about 4% of your GDP. So countries like that are going to need a lot more humanitarian aid. Now, the other big thing is fertilizer. And I think that if you look around the world, the question is export restrictions for the most part. Russia has export restrictions. There are also sanctions that are having an impact. Belarus, for example, after the downing of the Ryanair jet, the EU blocked exports going out of their ports on the Baltic for Belarus exports. Those had just begun to kick in at the time the war started. So people are, fertilizer prices everywhere have gone up, and as Chip, you pointed out, natural gas prices in Europe in particular have just gone through the roof. So they've gone so high that some fertilizer producers of nitrogen-based fertilizers had to shut down production. So all that's created a lot of problems. You asked Jim if this was the worst he's seen. I'd have to say, sure, in terms of price spikes, 2008, 7, 8, 2010, 11, those were big times. Even 2012, 13, when we had the drought here in North America, all those saw, at that time, nominal record prices. And I think everyone remembers sort of the early 2008 when wheat went up a wall. We saw $20 wheat at one point. But what's unique about this is that, droughts are one thing, and we deal with those all the time. In fact, large droughts like what we had in 2012. But you look to the next year of thinking, well, normal weather, we'll come back, we'll be able to rebuild these supplies. And so you have price spikes, but agriculture recovers. And certainly by 2014, we had begun to see prices come down again. And in fact, that they were down pretty much all the way through 2020 or so. Here with a war, you just don't know how long Ukraine is going to be out. And right now you have 20 million tons trapped inside the country. The whole country is plumbed to take out grain through those ports on the Black Sea. It's not easy shipping overland. And Yevhenii can speak far better than I can about this. But the the sources that I've talked to have said that it's like quadruple the cost of moving grain out through the Baltic Sea, or or even by rail to barge down to Constanta or some of those ports in Romania on the Black Sea. These are just not. This isn't the way you want grain to be flowing. You want it to go down to the Black Sea. I would love to see something done there, that they could get some UN action or something to allow food exports. But I fear that we're not going to be looking at that anytime soon.
Right.
And for me, if you look at how fast the rest of the world can adopt, you have, in the case of wheat, we have 60% of the wheat traded in the world is planted in the fall in the Northern Hemisphere. So that was all done well before this war broke out. And already we're seeing problems with the US crop. There's problems in France with their wheat crop. And then you turn to spring wheats, you're looking at we're having planting problems here in the US. We'll see what happens with the Canada crop, but I don't really see much supply response coming to really start trying to mitigate the supply issues for wheat, at least until 2023, where we have fall planted. Hopefully we'll get a big response on fall planted wheat, and then going into next summer when the harvest comes in.
Very good. Very good. Dr. Glauber, thank you so much. Jim, thank you so much. Now, before we get to Yevhenii, just want to let everybody know, if you hover your cursor at the bottom of the screen, the Q&A segment, click on that. That's how that's where I will be looking for the questions throughout the conversation here. And I'm not going to save the questions for the end. If a question comes in and it fits the topic that we're talking about, we're going to get straight to it and get that question answered. All right. Let's have a conversation now with Yevhenii. Yevhenii Tkachenko. He is with Arable in Ukraine. Yevhenii, it is good to talk with you again, sir. How are you?
Hi, I'm glad you invited me one more time. I'm very glad to see you again. I'm fine. I'm working, so everything is normal.
Okay, yeah, I don't know if everything is normal, Yevhenii, but the last time that we talked, you talked about your hometown, and what's the status on your hometown now?
You mean my hometown where I'm living right now, or where I lived before the war starts?
Where you lived before the war started?
My hometown before the war started, I guess you all know, it was Bucha. So everything is normal, like how we can say right now.
Yeah.
People are getting back, trying to live, trying to restore this orcs destroyed. We can't say give them another name than just orcs or something like this, and trying to live.
Yeah, very good. Where are you at now, Yevhenii?
I'm in central Ukraine, in town Kropivnitsky, where I was born and where is my mother lived.
Good. As I understand it, that's a relatively safe area of Ukraine.
Maybe yes, but we can't say that there is any safe area in Ukraine right now, because right now we have a air alarm about a couple of hours ago. Rockets fly away above my house, so not safe in any place of Ukraine right now.
No. Okay. Joe, Jim, jump in with questions for Yevhenii or comments and add on as we go here. Yevhenii, there is talk about this humanitarian pathway to move some grain out of Ukraine to some of the countries that need it the most, where we might be seeing some food shortages developing. What is the reaction inside of Ukraine to that? Because I've seen the conversations between the Russians and the Turkish leaders, I've not seen much participation in the conversation from Ukrainian leaders.
Because we don't see the results might be with like discussions with Russia and with Turkey. I don't know. It's only my opinion. Maybe government thinking in another way, but it's my opinion. How we can trust people who attacked us in like Germans in at 4 a.m. It's just not normal, and the all horrible thing that they doing right now at my country. We just can't believe them, and even I can say that. People in Ukraine don't want to any conversation with Russians.
Right.
We just want to move them all from our country and live in peace without them.
Yevhenii, the grain storage facilities in country and at port locations, how much damage has been done to those grain storage facilities?
I can't say that it was much, but you need to understand that it's might be the biggest problem for our farmers right now, because we can't export all the harvest of 2021. At the moment, 25 million tons of grain blocked in Ukraine right now. 25 millions of tons. And I spoke with a lot of farmers previous a couple of days, previous weeks, and all of them told me that the situation is quite difficult, because if they can't like sell harvest of 2021, they won't harvest a new crops, a new harvest of 2022, because they won't have any place to store.
Yeah.
And it is a big problem. The other problem, like you need to understand that, for example, previous years, we saw for 5,000 hectares of corn, and now it's like 3,000. So it's decreased, and the main cultures in corn, in sunflower, almost 2 times.
Okay.
And because of occupied territories, because of territories that right now war there, military operations, and so on. For example, Zaporizhia region have only 14% of their regions of their like soil where can they plant.
Yeah, cropland.
And all in the world need to understand that harvest of 2022, mostly Ukraine will stay in Ukraine, and only small part will export to other countries, because we have some food problems even now.
Right. Very good, Yevhenii. Let's hold right there for just now, because Dr. Glauber, what Yevhenii is talking about on the 21 bushels that are still in position, the lack of grain storage, what's going to happen to that 22 crop harvest. This gets right back to the point that you made. You made the point very strong, and I agree. Agriculture recovers. Ag recovers. But this is such a different situation. Ag will recover, but I have no idea what the timeline is, Dr. Glauber.
Yeah, no, exactly. And again, I think the other thing, we've certainly had a lot of wars over the last several years. This is a big war affecting some big agricultural producers, right? And so
Yes.
that's the other big thing, is this is a big hole. I mean, to think of Ukraine having a devastating drought year after year after year, that would be a huge hole to fill. And that's essentially what you're up against. I mean, I think this is, there's hopefully some things that can be done in terms of temporary storage bags, like what you see in South
Yep.
America sometimes. But frankly, I mean, these are not ideal, obviously not ideal solutions. And again, with a system, a highly efficient system that has developed in Ukraine and Russia, I might add, in terms of productivity gains, and then whole port facilities and rail facilities, everything streamed to get grain out through the Black Sea. You can't just reverse flow that and try to get that out through the West. And in fact, who would invest in trying to do that if you thought the war was going to end tomorrow? Because then it would just go right back. It's still going to be cheap. I don't care what sort of new rail lines you put in. There's some things that can mitigate it in the near term, but nowhere on the scale that is needed here, to bring that grain out. I mean, and obviously the people at the end of the day, it's going to be producers in Ukraine who say, "Hey, I'm not making it. I can't make money by selling this, let alone all the other problems of trying to get inputs, most of which come from Russia and Belarus. Diesel fuel, which is competing for use for military and everyone else. I mean, these are just enormous obstacles. But layering on top of that, you can't sell what you're trying to grow. I mean, that's a terrible position to be in.
Right. Jim, I want to get you back into the conversation here for a moment because of something that Yevhenii has talked about, and that is getting that grain out. We can't really trust any of the conversation that is taking place between Russia and anybody on starting to move some of that grain out of Ukraine. Can there be some sort of a coordinated effort? Is it even possible to bring a global coordinated effort together to put the confidence into the Ukrainian exporters that it could happen?
Well, I believe that absolutely you cannot trust Russia. That's not the area to look at. Some European officials are trying to get the UN involved, along with the US and other allies, to bring the force of their various navies, perhaps limited to international waters, but to build a corridor, if you will, into the Black Sea. I think that's the best, although dangerous, short-term solution. But to be very frank, they're hearing mixed signals from the United States, because we've been very not flippant. We have reversed several initial ideas in this whole war, but I think it's going to take the thrust of the big navals in Europe and the U.S. to really clear this out. And I frankly think that will eventually happen.
Okay.
I think the big problem there, though, is the threat of escalation, obviously. And remember, it's not, at the end of the day, it's not, I don't think, going to be U.S. vessels or national vessels or naval vessels transporting grain. It's going to be private companies that are going to have to be paying for insurance and everything else. And right now, you're going to be hard pressed to get people in there bringing in private bulk traders and other things with the threat of a mine or a missile hit or something like that.
Yeah, Jim, they've talked about these letters of comfort from the U.S. government to the insurance companies to get them to insure these shipments of grain. I
think
a letter of comfort is one thing. Being on that boat as it leaves missile range is completely different.
Yeah, but again, we're talking about a pariah with Putin, and he's using food terrorism. So how do you, sooner or later, you got to show strength. And yeah, it could be an escalation, but how you going to deal with it? You deal
Right.
with strength. The only thing that section of the world respects is strength. And we're going to have to make that call sooner or later.
Right, right. Okay, a couple of questions have been coming in. Dan Man is very active on here, and I actually asked Dan Man's first question before it was even posted. But this one I'm gonna send back to Yevhenii. It's the second part of his first question. Can
Yeah.
we clear the mines that are protecting Odessa from an amphibious attack by Russia? Let's just ask the question: can we clear all the mines that are in the way right now?
No, it's we need a lot of time to clean all of this, and I don't know if our army will do this right now
Okay.
because it's too dangerous. Too dangerous.
Well, and
We
probably a
need
priority list, right, Yevhenii?
Yeah, we need to understand that if we will do these steps, we need to understand that our army, our people who will doing this, will be safe. But nobody will give you 100% about that. Nobody.
Right, right. Another question from Dan Mann for Yevhenii here. If storage for the new crop is very limited due to old crop stocks, which we've established that, now, what will happen with the new crop? Does it go unharvested, or does it pile on the ground, or do you try to get some of the bags in, the storage bags in
No,
that Glauber
no.
was talking about?
No, not so many farmers have opportunity to to gather all of this and to put it in some bags, silo bags or something like this, because you need to place where to keep these silo bags even. I guess that farmers won't even harvest.
Right.
They won't even go to field because it's like spend money on gas, on diesel, time, and machines and so on. I think they won't do this. Such things my friends from farmers are speaking right now.
Gotcha. Yevhenii, I've got someone that's looking for a little bit more clarity on what exactly it is that you do. What is your role with Arable there in Ukraine?
In Ukraine, I'm a business development manager. I'm trying to find some new dealers, trying to help farmers to understand why weather stations is important tool in their their farmers. So something like this.
Yeah.
But if you remember our previous meeting, I told you that farmers are sitting at their bags with money and waiting what situation will be. And I can say that right now they are I get information for previous 2 weeks that they right now spend their money here in Ukraine on technique, on parts, on precision some things. And for previous couple of weeks, I found some new dealers of Arable here in Ukraine, find some potential clients who are testing right now. So things in agriculture beginning to move, and it's great news for our work.
There's always a crop that's got to go in the ground or a crop that's got to be harvested, Yevhenii.
Yeah,
So
we are thinking that everything will be normal, and finally we win the war. Everything will be export to world as we want, and what the world wants, and new harvest of 2022 will be gathered.
excellent. Excellent. Well, the first time that we talked to you, Yevhenii, you said it flat out. We will fight and we will win.
Yep.
That
It's-
attitude
it's
has
only
not
it's on
changed.
it's only time.
Yeah.
We need time to win. That's all.
Yeah. Wow. For Dr. Glauber, this is from Dr. Leah Windsor. Which countries are likely to experience political destabilization as a direct result of the Ukrainian conflict vis-a-vis decreased agricultural exports?
Yeah, I think Chip, you'd have to go to the probably North Africa and in the Middle East. I mean, again, these are countries that consume a lot of wheat. First of all, I mean, it's not like we're talking some city in West Africa where wheat prices may be a little higher. They eat a little less bread. Here we're talking where 35% of your calories are coming from wheat. I mean, just an amazing amount in Egypt. And if you look, 70% of that wheat's imported. Most of that comes from the Black Sea. So they're dealing with high prices right now. They're trying to find wheat in other places, but bread prices are high. What the government does is they subsidize a lot of wheat. So all the lessons of Arab Spring, when we saw those prices rise in 2010, 11, a lot of people ended up rioting and other things, and governments were toppled. I think the lesson of that is you try to keep you do what you can to keep bread prices and other things down, and so that households aren't bearing the brunt of all these price rises. But as you know, I mean, we have food price inflation here. Even again, you could look in February around the world, and a lot of countries were already seeing food price inflation up above 5%. And so I think, these countries are really struggling with this. And for countries that already have, a lot of discontent, food is I think even in Arab Spring, it was less a problem of high food prices causing the discontent, but it certainly was ultimately the spark that set off the explosions. And I think that's a real problem. And I think that's one reason why you see these countries so proactive right now about trying to get supplies. Egypt's talking about having 6 months inventory, trying to really buy in advance, lock up supplies. And that's why, with stock levels as low as they are, and again, if I exclude China from global stock levels, which I think you almost have to, that grain doesn't show up in world markets. No one knows how much, no one knows what quality, and they still import wheat, I might add. So if you consider the world without China in terms of global stock levels, we're at the lowest level that we've seen since 2007-8, when we saw the big price spikes then. So I think that with low stocks like that, any little news causes ripples on futures markets. And we've seen, the sort of increased volatility over the last couple of months precisely for those reasons.
Right. Jim Wiesemeyer from Dan Man. Will Turkey allow UN escort ships through the strait to the Black Sea they control if Putin then threatens Turkey? And I don't know if that's going to happen, but I did hear through an international grain trader today that some Russian officials are saying, well, Poland is next. I don't know how or where this ends. Mute, Jim. Hit your mute button.
That indeed would be an escalation, which could happen. As far as Turkey, they have shown over the years, they have a list of what we want. And if they get what they want, they'll do it.
Okay.
So they're very self-interest oriented.
Okay. Very good. Back to Yevhenii on this one. This one comes in from Boris. Exporting the production is one big concern. How much is also limiting the availability of inputs for the growers and farmers in Ukraine, both for the production on the production side, that being the fertilizer, and the crop protection products? Are those available to Ukrainian producers?
Yep.
No problems?
No problems. I had a conversation with bear breeding, with Cropio, with Carteva, with Syngenta, and everything is normal. Normal with fertilizers, normal with seeds. Our planting period is already end. So
Okay.
farmers saw everything they need. So everything is normal.
Okay.
We don't get. I told you last time we don't have any problems with that.
Yep.
We have everything. We have everything.
Okay.
May some difficulties with diesel,
Yep.
but everything is normal, and farmers take as much as they need for their work.
Right. Well, when the crop was going in the ground, Yevhenii, I was surprised. I was shocked when you said that there's plenty of diesel available to get the crop in the ground. That was surprising to me. But are supplies starting to tighten up now?
One more time, internet.
Are
connection.
supplies of diesel getting shorter now?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, everything for diesel, everything is now right is good. Some problems with gasoline for me, for other people's, but army, farmers, medicine, I don't know. Everything is critical. They have all they need: diesel, gasoline, in liters, what they need.
Okay.
So everything is normal in this way.
Okay. Yevhenii, I'm going to stay with
Yep.
you on this one from John. Croatia has offered to allow Ukraine to export grain through them to the Adriatic. Is that workable? Can the rail lines get Ukrainian grain to Croatian ports?
No.
It's a different
As
gauge, isn't it?
as I am a work in different spheres of agriculture, I know that it's impossible because everything in Ukraine logistic was made to move all harvest to ports and to use ships and so on. And for now, it's very difficult to move 25 million tons of corns to Croatia by cars or by railway station. By rail, it's impossible. It might be small amount, but not all of that. Not
Is
all
it
of that.
possible, Yevhenii, to use it? Are there other countries that that could be a portal for Ukrainian grains to the rest of the world?
Might be, but again, railway stations, railway ways, and trucks ways it's very difficult to set up this logistic. Very difficult.
Gotcha.
And you need to understand, for example, by car, by a big truck, you can move only, for example, 40 tons.
Yeah.
Right.
And we
Right.
have amount of 25 millions. And
Right.
the way from Ukraine, even maybe to Poland or to Croatia, will increase the price of this product of wheat or corn or sunflower or anything else, because it will be much more spend of money.
Yeah. Much more expensive.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Very good. Very good. Boy, we are getting into the last 15 minutes of the conversation here, and we're going to start looking forward more and more. A couple of questions that have come in from Stephen and from Beth are very much forward looking. I appreciate those. If you have any questions that you would like to get into the conversation, now's the time to get them in here. Dr. Glauber, I'm going to you with this one from Stephen. this is a difficult one for watchers of U.S. grain prices. Are there a few scenarios you can frame for prices over the next 12 to 18 months, considering how this situation might play out?
Yeah, boy, that's tough. I
Yep.
think even if you were to think that miraculously the war would end tomorrow and you could get that grain back up running, I still think we're still seeing pretty high prices until that grain gets to the market. And I think, already we're talking about some loss out of Ukraine already. You're talking about North American wheat crop, winter wheat crop that is okay, but not as great as not as big as a lot of people had hoped, given what was planted. So I still think that you're not really seeing much price moderation until 2023. For wheat. Now, soybeans, some of the other commodities that are been high. Look, we're going to see a good crop here in the U.S. If we get good weather, that's going to be really helpful. We'll see Brazil will plant heavily. Soybeans, I think, should come. Corn still, corn's something to watch just because of these fertilizer prices so high. So I think this is going to be around for 18 months or so. The real problem is what happens if this war goes on for 18 months, 24 months. It's that's where it's, I would think something has to break before then, but that would really prolong these prices for longer. Yeah. And I mean, it's just a huge hole, a huge deficit to try to make up, and people can. But remember, in the U.S., sure, we can plant a lot more wheat, but at what pay? Or where's the Peter that we robbed for Paul? Right? I mean, it comes out of some area somewhere. And we have some land in CRP that could be brought into production. It's not great quality land. It's not. This isn't going to make it up. And right now, I just don't see anything happening, certainly over the next 18 months or so. Okay. But as chief economist, I was often wrong. So we'll see.
Oh, very good. Oh, wow. When there's so many different variables at play and so much uncertainty in a situation, it is unbelievably difficult to come up with, to put enough polish on a crystal ball to say that this is where the prices are going to end up in 12 to 18 months. I agree with what you've said, Dr. Glauber, that if this lasts longer, if 12 months from now we are still talking about the conflict in Ukraine, it's going to be very difficult to back wheat prices off in particular. I agree completely.
Let me just add one more thing. And I hate to be it's really easy to get in this game of being an alarmist about everything. And I don't want to sound that way at all, because I think generally, again, I think the markets have performed extremely well. What does worry me is right now you look at a market like rice. Rice prices have been moderate compared to all these other commodity prices. Yet we all remember 2007, 2008. We had all sorts of export restrictions came in from India and Vietnam, big rice exporters that really sent that market in to record high levels and problems everywhere at a time actually when there were global rice supplies were quite adequate. It worries me that could export restrictions bleed over into the rice market. I think that would be a terrible thing to happen. The other thing is fertilizer prices are so high, and rice is a very fertilizer intensive crop. I mean, look at rice area here in the U.S. decline this year, at least according to the prospective planning's report, right? The intentions report. And it worries me if we were to see some cutback in rice that right now we aren't. We're seeing good crop out of there, but that's the one shoe that I rather not see drop right now.
Right. Jim Wiesemeyer, I saw you grinning as we were talking about prices. I know
Well-
you've got an opinion.
No, well, it's open-ended. I would not, anybody who tells you they know even a price range, put
Yeah.
your hand on your wallet, because they don't know. What we keep on coming up to is how long is it going to take to see the end of this? And what is going to be the end? We do not know.
Right.
We do not know.
Okay. Which gets us to this question. And you know what? Before we get to this question, I'm going to ask you one of my own here. We've got a couple of minutes that I can do this. Number one, start real quick with Yevhenii. The aid that Ukraine is receiving, is it directed to the right locations? Is it in the right format? Is it doing what it needs to do? Yevhenii, did you get that?
It was a question to me.
Yeah, the aid that is coming into Ukraine from the U.S. in particular, is it doing what it is supposed to do?
Yep.
Good.
Yep. I can't say because even I'm not like politics or something like this, but I will keep quiet.
It's doing what it's supposed to do.
Yep. Yep.
Very
It's
good.
doing. You will see the results, I guess, in nearest future.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. So, Jim, included in some of that aid were some tweaks to U.S. crop insurance to encourage additional production here in the U.S. Are we seeing any more movement on that?
Not really. There's a letter on the prevent plant. Let me just go under the current season. Dr. Glauber talked about some of the problems, especially in the far west, South Dakota, portions North Dakota,
Yeah.
Minnesota, of getting the price differential relative to the crop insurance. So the crop insurance companies are made whole, if you will, for them to have the confidence to plant another crop. Because if you go after your last planting date, you
Yeah.
get reduced coverage on the insurance. That's one part that I think will eventually be announced. Two is that it's very limited, as Dr. Glauber said, short term, as far as the additional acres you're going to get from some of the ideas that have been floating relative to double cropping, et cetera. And the conservation reserve program is
Yes.
very limited because most of that is indeed fragile acres, not all of it, but most of it. So we
Yes.
just need time. We need time for the price a signal to kick in relative to also the problem with the fertilizer that keeps on coming up here. We're talking about perhaps elevated levels to take care of that.
Right.
But then we're talking very lofty prices. And I totally agree with Dr. Glauber relative to India and rice. Recall that India said for weeks that they would not ban wheat exports, and they did.
Yes.
So I'm not, going to rule out this
Pay attention there.
being taken there on the rice side.
Right. Okay, Jim, question from Beth. When Russia is not successful in Ukraine, how does that change China's strategy to become the new world power?
They're rethinking right now, on that one, but they still have, well, I want Dr. Glauber to address this too. They think they have history on their side. They think that their version of governance is going to be the way of the future. I think it'll delay them, but it won't stop them.
Dr. Glauber, agree with that?
Yeah, no, I think that's generally what I would say as well. I mean, these are, when you have leadership that's in for a very long time and no clear succession or whatever, they can have long views and keep at those things. And China certainly, I mean, the amazing thing to me is China is pretty much everyone's number one trading partner right now, right? I mean, for both both on the importing side, but also on, as far as agriculture is concerned, on the export side. I mean, all the major agricultural exporters in the world, it's their number one market. And I think that's going to continue one way or the other. But
Yep. Dr. Glauber, I think this is a really good question. Something that we need to be thinking about comes from
Yes.
Lachlan in
Yep.
Australia. Very important question. It's a little bit off the path of the grains, but can feedlots manage their margins if costs of production increases as a result of increased price of corn and the prices for livestock that producers receive don't rise equally? Can we maintain those margins?
I have to tell you, 2007, 8, 2009, when I was at the department, I had to keep reminding people that there was a whole other side of the sector that were being affected by high grain prices. And not everyone loved the fact that corn prices were through the roof. Just judging by the number of hog producers and poultry operators and other sorts of people who were coming through my office at the time. And I think that's the thing that concerns me the most here. And you see it in Europe already. Ukraine was a huge corn or source of corn imports for the EU, even more so because it was non-GMO. So it was attractive. They've had to change their regulations to allow grain coming in from South America now. But it is just to say that these high prices for protein meals, high prices for
all the inputs,
caloric feeds and everything. Yeah, I think we're going to see some real squeeze in margins. And so that's, if you're thinking of pressure on food prices, ultimately that's going to remain around for a while as well. So I think that is a concern. And you had mentioned the Malaysian export ban. Think of these poultry producers. We think of export bans as really hurting those outside, right? Because all those importing countries now have to pay even higher prices. But it kills the producers inside who are looking for those export markets. And here that's happening at a time when Malaysia poultry producers are getting hit with high corn prices. They're getting hit with high soybean prices. So I think I think the animal sector is not right away, but it's going to come down the pipe the longer these high prices persist.
I think that's a good one for us to wrap up our official comments on here. Yevhenii, I'm going to go to you for the final words and the final comments here. What do we need to know about what is happening in Ukraine right now?
I guess all the information from news, and it's really true.
Very good.
It's it's hard. It's very difficult, but we keep fighting, we keep living, we keep working, we keep planting. So we're trying to do all our best and in all of spheres of our lives.
Very good.
Everything will be okay.
Yevhenii, we're praying for you. Our thoughts are with you all the time, and the other and others in Ukraine.
Thanks, Chip.
Stay safe, and I look forward to our next conversation. All right.
Yep. Bye.
All right. Very good. Pro Farmer Policy Analyst Jim Wiesemeyer, thank you so much.
Sure, Chip.
All right. And Dr. Joe Glauber. Joe is a senior research fellow at the International Food Policy Research Institute in Washington, D.C. Dr. Glauber, thank you so much for making time for us today.
Always good, Chip. Thanks.
All right. Stay tuned to more notices from Farm Journal on when your next Farm Country Update will be held. Thank you so much for attending this Farm Country Update.